Well, Indiana and Wisconsin are having two completely different football seasons in roles that historically have been reversed, but the Badgers have a little spoiler on their minds this weekend in Bloomington.
You are Locked On College Crossover, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome in. It is a Locked On crossover edition of Hoosiers and Badgers. I'm Jacob Goins of Locked On Hoosiers. He is Ryan Harings of Locked On Badgers. Thank you so much for making our respective shows your first listen or your first watch every single day, and also making Locked On the #1 sports podcasting network. So thank you for all of that, supporting us any way that you do. And we get to talk Hoosiers and Badgers today. Ryan, we'll hit on some basketball on the way out because I think you've already moved on to basketball season as far as I'm concerned.
We're there. Oh, we're there.
We'll talk about a top 25 Wisconsin basketball team, the Hoosiers trying to get into the top 25. But of course, we got to make predictions and talk about Indiana and Wisconsin football because the Badgers could play spoiler this weekend with Luke Fickell on the sidelines, my friend.
I cannot wait. And we were talking before the show, man. The Badgers actually have a little momentum. Now, they're not as talented as Indiana. Indiana is very justifiably a very heavy favorite at home. But the Badgers have a little bit of mojo right now. And a lot of Badger fans are excited not to go into this matchup and win, but to see how they continue to stack up their recent level of play against Oregon and Washington. Close game against Oregon, beating Washington at home. I think there are some Badger fans, and you know this, fans convince themselves. There are some Badger fans that have convinced themselves, okay, we got it figured out. Let's get into Bloomington. Let's make some noise.
I mean, coming off your first Big Ten win after what, a 6-game losing streak, that has to boil over somehow. That has to flood into this game in some way, shape, or form. Now, whether Indiana puts that to bed early or not, we'll find out tomorrow. But Wisconsin has to have a little bit of optimism coming in and saying, well, if we just beat Washington, why can't we beat Indiana? I absolutely think they'll have that mentality.
Yeah, sports are about momentum, right? They're about belief. They're about kids buying into something. And, we're going to get into this because before the season, you had a prediction. What was the prediction? Let's go there right now because this is actually going to dovetail to my point. What was the prediction?
My prediction, and I felt so good about this, Ryan, and you told me from the start I was wrong. You did. But my prediction was that Luke Fickell would not be coaching in this game because he would have been fired as the head coach of Wisconsin football. And 6-game losing streak, I thought that would have been enough. But nope, don't worry. Wisconsin says, you know what, Luke Fickell? We're going to keep you around a little bit longer because they didn't want to pay the guy. And what's he do? He wins a top 20, gets a win over a top 25 team. I mean, what a crazy situation there in Madison. So I was wrong. Luke Fickell, congratulations. You somehow kept your job.
And isn't it wild in the world we live in where all these other schools, right, are paying massive buyouts and coaches are moving on, almost an unprecedented coaching carousel. The Badgers veered the other way. Right, the Badgers say, no, we're going to keep you. And after they did that, I'm not saying this is a one-to-one correlation, but after they made that announcement, we saw maybe the Badgers up to that point, the best game of the season against Oregon, where they really punched Oregon around. It was 7-0 at halftime. The next week they beat Washington. I really do think, and I mentioned this on a previous show, there's a new coach bump. You and I have always, this, you follow sports. Yep. There's also kind of maybe the guy that recruited us is staying bump. And I think they felt that. And the team has played better since that announcement. So you could argue back and forth how big of a deal money had to do with this. Certainly there was justification to call for change in Madison with the way it was going. And we're going to talk about Cignetti and the news there with him as well. But this team has played better since they got assurance that the guy that recruited them is going to be back. And I think that tells you he didn't lose the locker room. I think that tells you that this team is still, at least the players that are playing are bought in. And I think that fuels some optimism for this team going forward.
Well, I want to ask you, though, how do the fans feel about Luke Fickell hanging around? And to the second part to that, before we do flip this to Cignetti, because there was plenty of drama there as well, was this Wisconsin just not wanting to get into a historically big coaching search? More P4 coaches or more Division I coaches have been fired this year than we've ever seen up to this point in the season. So is that where Wisconsin was, not wanting to get involved? And how are the fans feeling about it?
All great questions. The fans are justifiably frustrated, right? And I've been somebody that's been a little cautious on this in terms of I think you need generally, I think coaches need 4 years. If you don't give coaches 4 years, you're going to get into this perpetual cycle of, for a while, Indiana basketball was in that cycle where you're shifting coaches, which means you're shifting the roster, which means you're constantly never giving anybody the time to cook the cake. You're giving them the ingredients, and then you yank them out of the kitchen before the cake is baked. I think fans are frustrated, but ultimately winning solves everything. If you play well on the field, you just won against Michigan, that will solve everything. In terms of maybe why Wisconsin, behind the machinations of it, I do think there was a concern from Wisconsin about this is going to be a coaching cycle with a lot of big name schools that probably have better resources than Wisconsin getting the top 10. I also think buyout played a role here. And then there's also Chris McIntosh, the athletic director, is the person who hired Luke Fickell. And Chris McIntosh was hired by Barry Alvarez.
Yeah.
You connect this chain, like Barry still believes in Mac believes in Fickell. So those organizational figures, like especially Barry Alvarez, are kind of tied together. Yeah. And in some sense, Chris McIntosh doesn't want Luke Fickell to fail. So it means he's not going to let him go because it would be his job on the line. So there's some connection there too.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. And to speak on this from Indiana's drama that we went through, about a month or so ago, with Cignetti getting a historically big extension, now the third highest paid coach in college football. Indiana didn't want to be in this. I'll tell you that straight up. Indiana wanted nothing to do with another coaching search and losing Cignetti to a bigger program. They said, nah, you're not leaving Bloomington, brother. You're going to stay right here. $11.6 million a year. Fully guaranteed, Ryan. I don't love that. That's a lot of money till 2033, I believe. That's fully guaranteed out the door no matter what happens this year, next year, or beyond. But Indiana decided it's not going to get any better. And you're seeing that on the field and hopefully continue to see that come tomorrow, which we'll talk about the game in just a moment. But that's where Indiana was. When Penn State came calling, Indiana forked over the cash. They forked it up. They said, you're not leaving. You're not going to another Big Ten school for sure. And we're not going to let the SEC steal you either. And so I think the Big Ten as a whole should be worried about Cignetti staying at Indiana. But I admit I'm not in love with the money that's tied to it if it goes south for whatever reason. Not that I want to bet against Curt Cignetti, but Ryan, you know that's a lot of money, dude. That's a lot of money.
Did it ever feel it is, right? Did it ever feel like there was real risk of Cignetti leaving? Did it ever feel like there was a scenario where Indiana either wouldn't pony up or another school would come in with such a big offer that you just wouldn't be able to match it?
Yeah, it's a good question. My personal feeling was that he loves Indiana and that he didn't want to leave. I was told by some pretty credible sources and ties with the Cignetti family that Ohio State was probably the only job that he would leave Indiana for, which clearly that one wasn't open and that wasn't really an option at the moment. I was told that that was the one big place because that's clearly a step up and a jump, right? That would be the job that he would have left for. Since that wasn't an option, Indiana, he was happy there. He's gotten what he's wanted. That's a big part of it too, is Indiana has given Curt Cignetti what he has asked for since day one. And when they do that, and it's like working for a company, right? If they give you the resources to be successful, you don't want to leave. You don't want to go somewhere else unless it's just a no-brainer. That's what happened with Curt Cignetti in Indiana. So I don't think there was ever a major threat for him to leave, but Indiana just wasn't going to stress that and worry about that. So they signed him to another extension, paid him a bunch of money, and now he's at Indiana forever, has Indiana as the second-ranked team in the country as they prepare to host Wisconsin tomorrow. We'll talk about that and how the Badgers really could try to play spoiler and come in and kind of throw off some of these playoff conversations for the Hoosiers and maybe get their second win in a row. We talk about the Hoosiers and the Badgers on the football field coming up next on this Locked On Crossover. This Locked On Crossover of Hoosiers and Badgers is brought to you by DoorDash. It's almost the weekend, right? So it's time to look back and crown this week's MVP on Who Delivered, powered by DoorDash. Just like you can win every Saturday with DoorDash Streaks, saving more every time that you order. These players delivered when it mattered most. Let's break it down. Ryan, I got to ask, who was the difference maker? Who delivered for Wisconsin last week and a 13-10 win over Washington and got the first Big Ten win of the season?
Yeah, you got to go with Mason Posa, man. True freshman linebacker, 2.5 sacks, 13 tackles, forced fumble recovery, set up the Badgers' only touchdown of the game, and he has been on an absolute tear. So if you're looking for somebody who delivers every weekend, it's 2 weekends in a row for Posa. I imagine he's going to do it again this weekend.
Mine is clear. It is Fernando Mendoza, the guy that is still the betting favorite to win the Heisman Trophy. Had his Heisman moment against Penn State last week, and the touchdown pass to Omar Cooper, one of the greatest catches I've ever seen. He clearly delivered for Indiana, and so have a lot of other players for Indiana, for Wisconsin all season long. But just like they delivered for their teams, DoorDash delivers your Saturdays. With DoorDash Streaks, you save every Saturday that you order, stack it up all season, and you could save up to $250, including $100 in DoorDash credits. Order this Saturday. Keep the streak alive. Fuel your game day only with DoorDash. Terms apply. Promo period runs through November 18th. All right, welcome back into this Locked On crossover of Badgers and Hoosiers. He is Ryan Harings of Locked On Badgers. I'm Jacob Goins of Locked On Hoosiers. Thank you so much for making us your go-to spot for all things Badgers and Hoosiers. We're going to talk some basketball coming up in just a little bit on our way out, since it is crossover season now between football and basketball. But Ryan, there's a football game tomorrow, and you were talking about the confidence that Wisconsin could be coming in with in this game, and the fans have started to get a little hyped up as well. Spoiler is on their minds, and they absolutely could, with the Hoosiers as the second-ranked team in the country. Where would you put this in terms of biggest wins for Wisconsin if they pull it off in recent memory? Not that it is going to propel Wisconsin into a playoff or anything, obviously, but just the way the season's gone, what would this win mean, and where would you put it in recent memory?
Gosh, that's a great question, man. In recent history, it's about as good as they would have had. Now, you got to remember, this is a Wisconsin team that has been trending down for a couple of years from where they were, but this would be a massive win for the program, a program that is struggling to find some identity under Luke Fickell, and it is honestly struggling to continue to create belief. If you were to go into a team that Indiana going into Oregon and winning that game, that's one of the most impressive wins of the season, what they did against Penn State last week. And you mentioned Mendoza, the Heisman moment. That was incredible. By the way, that's what makes college football incredible, moments like that.
Yes. Yes.
I was
no other sport other than college basketball has stuff like that.
My jaw was on the floor watching that drive. Like, hats off to Mendoza, everybody on that offense, incredible. So if you were able to go into a team that's won on the road in tough environments, that's won in the clutch, that's beaten bad teams to a pulp, that has a coach that takes no prisoners. Cignetti is a dude. It would be a massive win. I don't know if I could describe it. For Badger fans that had written off the season, if you were to go in and get a win of this caliber, I think Badger fans would be happy if it would be close. I think that's the goal. So if you got to win, forget all those fans, chanting "Fire Fickell." Man, season tickets would be renewed at the end of this game if you got this win. So I don't think you could understate the magnitude of it, really.
Yeah, and for Indiana, I mean, is the season over if you lose this game? No, I think you have to reconsider where you end up in the college football playoff rankings and the college football playoff bracket, because the way I've described it is this, Ryan. This could be Indiana's last home game of the season, because we end the year on the road at Purdue. If we end up as a top 4 seed in the playoff, you get the first round bye, you play the rest of them neutral site, and this is it. This is your last game at Memorial Stadium for a big-time senior class, guys that were on the team last year who went to the playoff, a team this year that's going to get back to the playoff. So this is a special moment for Indiana at home. I know it's the early kick, right? 11 a.m. Central, noon Eastern, but this is an opportunity for the Hoosiers to put out one more big performance for another sold-out crowd. But if Wisconsin does pull off the upset here, then Indiana has to figure out, okay, who do we end up playing in the college football playoff? And you will most likely have to play the extra game. And so I think that motivation will be there for Indiana. It's also about getting healthy. Right, with a couple of guys like Aiden Fisher, who did play last week and looked pretty good. Elijah Surratt did not. He's our number 1 receiver. Trying to get him back in the game, trying to get some of those defensive linemen in there. You have Drew Evans on the offensive line, who got banged up a week ago. So there's some sort of a weird balance between getting healthy and then staying healthy in a game like this that don't want to say it doesn't matter, because it does, but the season's not on the line, if that makes sense for Indiana.
No, I think that's really well said. And you're actually hitting on something I wanted to ask you about. How big of a game is this for Indiana? Now, you mentioned the home game, right? For sure. But if you're deciding Surratt, let's say he's 75% or 80%, he's awesome. He's phenomenal. Yeah. Is there a thought that, we're going to hold him out until we really need him? And could that start to play into this, given Indiana team coming off an incredible win against Penn State, but a grueling win, a physical win? Could you be a little victory hung over there, maybe a couple players that you're trying to hold out. I guess my question, big picture, is does Indiana maybe overlook Wisconsin a little bit right here?
Yeah, I think it's possible for sure. I think Wisconsin winning last week will limit that chance of Indiana overlooking them because that's how Curt Cignetti is built. Again, he comes out of the Saban tree, right? So you have to remember that, and it's wild to see the characteristics and the traits that Cignetti has that are similar to the greatest college football coach we've ever seen. And I think Wisconsin winning a week ago, especially against a good top 25 Washington squad, will almost regain the attention of Indiana to the point of, okay, Wisconsin, they found a way to get it done. We don't want to let them build on that and use some of that positivity and momentum that we talked about. But I do think there's a chance Indiana could use this as a hold guys out game because I think if Surratt, I'll say this, Surratt is probably good to go. If that were to be Ohio State or Michigan or somebody like that last week, I think he probably plays, but he didn't. Now, you very well could have used him, and Indiana's a different team without him out there, but you could see that on the defensive side of the football in this game against Wisconsin. I hope not. I'm not a supporter of that idea, but I get it, right? I mean, if you're trying to prepare for what could be a Big Ten championship game, because that is still a possibility too, and losing this game would throw some complications in with that, plus the college football playoff, you've got to do what's best long term. So all that to say, I think Indiana will give it everything it's got as much as it needs to. That may be kind of a wishy-washy answer, but I think the Hoosiers can win this game even if not everybody plays. For Wisconsin, I mean, you guys just got to throw everything there is. You literally have nothing to lose and everything to gain, right?
Oh yeah, no, this is throw all the haymakers you can throw. Against Washington, you have Sean West, the punter, coming out throwing a fake punt for a first down, leading the team in passing yards in a victory. By the way, the punter,
phenomenal,
24 yards. No, but it is a the backs got pushed to the wall certainly this year, and I just be straight up honest with you. I'm very proud of how this team responded. I've been able to talk to a lot of the players on this roster through years of covering this team, and I was thrilled for them. They rushed the field, and a lot of people were like, are you really rushing the field against Washington? I'm like, yes, you are. Because this season has been so tough, and these kids, not kids, young men, but that was a huge moment for them. And it felt like a bit of a watershed moment where maybe, and that doesn't mean you beat Indiana, but a watershed moment where maybe you start moving in the right direction. If you are the Badgers and you want to squint to find kind of the path to competitiveness, and that's the term I'm going to use in this game, what's the path to competitiveness? Because I want to be realistic to just how good Indiana's been for 2 years and how great of a coach Cignetti is, and Mendoza is amazing. But if you want to find the path for competitiveness, it is that Wisconsin front seven, and that pass rush has been, for really the majority of the season, teams have not been able to run on Wisconsin. Mason Reiger is a really good pass rusher. He had 11 pressures last week against Washington, which I believe led the FBS in pressures. And then you have these two dynamic young inside linebackers who they're just incredible. They're true freshmen, both of them, and they have no business being this good. And for 2 weeks, they've been the best players on the field against Oregon and Washington. So there's a lot of kind of young excitement, and it's almost like they don't know better. They don't know that this is the season's lost in a way. Yeah. And I think Badger fans are really stoked for it. So it's tough, man. Mendoza's incredible. I want to almost ask you, will a pass rush, because Wisconsin secondary struggled this year, but will a pass rush, if it starts to get home, is that something that will fluster Mendoza in your experience, or is he just to the point where none of it really matters?
I don't think it flusters him, but it affects how this team plays because that's what Iowa did. That's what Oregon did. That's what Penn State did. And Indiana struggled in the passing offense. Now, thankfully, they were able to lean against the run game a little bit and use that to their advantage to really, really good running backs, Roman Hemby, Kalen Black. But Wisconsin, you said it, they're a really good rushing defense. They just have to decide, are they going to stack the box and stop the run, or are they going to bring pressure in different angles and different, blitzes and things like that to try and confuse Fernando Mendoza, who, by the way, is an NFL quarterback. This guy is still the betting favorite for the Heisman, but also one of the betting favorites to be the number 1 overall pick. I mean, the dude is legit. So he's seen it before, but yes, a pass rush can get to him because of the recent struggles and injuries on the Indiana offensive line, but getting the football out quickly is something that Indiana needs to do. Because if you're Wisconsin, why not, man? Bring the house, bring it every time. The secondary isn't great, so they can't defend very long anyway. So just bring the house and see if you can get home to Mendoza. And I was going to ask you, Wisconsin wins this game and pulls off the upset and plays spoiler if, but Ryan, I think we just answered it. I think it's if you get home to Mendoza and put a bunch of pressure on him and don't allow him to pick the secondary apart, sounds like a winning formula for me for Wisconsin.
No, I think defensively that's 100% it. Offensively, really quick for all the Indiana fans, you're going to see probably Carter Smith at quarterback. Okay. The Badgers have been decimated by injury the last several years at quarterback. And Carter Smith, true freshman, 4-star kid, good mobility. So if you're an Indiana fan, you're going to see a quarterback, young guy who can get out of the pocket, runs tough, move, RPO action, RPO hit the slant, RPO smoke screen, throwing. I mean, he's a true freshman, so there's a lot of growth that still needs to happen there. But you will see a young quarterback that can use his legs, and I think the Badgers will try to, much like Washington, quarterback draw, quarterback power, RPO. So you're going to see a lot of that if you're an Indiana fan.
And this Indiana defense is so much fun to watch, and there's so many dudes on that side of the ball as well. So, look, it's a big spread, and Indiana should win. But if Wisconsin can keep it close like Penn State did, you never know what could happen tomorrow early afternoon as Indiana and Wisconsin meet on the football field. But as much fun as football is to talk about, it is crossover season because the hardwood has begun. Basketball is here. We're going to talk about the Hoosiers and Badgers on that side of things for our final segment right after this on this Locked On Crossover. Stick around. Today's Locked On Crossover is brought to you by FanDuel. The NBA is back, so is college basketball, and there's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you missed the start of a game or you want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout. The spread for the football game this weekend, as we record this, for Indiana versus Wisconsin, live spread at FanDuel.com is 29.5, Mr. Harings. Are you touching it? Are you putting something on it? If you had to, would you take Wisconsin plus 29.5?
On principle, I am betting Wisconsin plus 29.5. Absolutely.
That's a lot of points. I don't care what matchup it is. That's a lot of points, dude. And Indiana's beaten teams by it before already, but I don't know, man. That scene, especially if a couple players don't play, well, I don't know. I may have to dive into that Wisconsin spread as well. So if you want to do that or find something else that piques your interest, you can do that right now with FanDuel. They're giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So head to FanDuel.com right now and sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. All right, Ryan has waited almost 24 minutes for this. It's basketball talk for a little bit. And look, it's exciting times in both Madison and Bloomington, two programs that they're different, but they're the same. But I don't even know how you would describe it because Wisconsin's currently ranked. Indiana's right outside knocking on the door. New coach in Bloomington, new rosters all over the place, man. Just give us kind of a synopsis here, Ryan, of what Wisconsin basketball is supposed to be like this year.
Yeah, man, I love talking hoops with you because Indiana fans are hoops people. I'm almost curious. Can I ask you this really quick question before you get into basketball? Are Indiana fans more excited about football right now or basketball, given it just started?
Football. Yeah, okay. Football for sure. Now, basketball starting 3-0 and beating Marquette the other day, that was a big deal. And the fact that Indiana's offense on basketball is on fire, that has really sparked it. But no, football is the talk of the town still for sure.
As it should be. I was just curious. As it should be. Yeah, man, the Badgers, for, again, Indiana fans who really know basketball, grew up in the Big Ten, have watched a ton of it, just like every Badger fan or every Indiana fan, my goodness, I'm sorry, remembers traditional Wisconsin basketball. You have Greg Gard out here dropping 90 points a game on teams with this high-octane three-point shooting offense. It's year two of this offensive renaissance for the Badgers, where they are absolutely spreading the floor, running in transition, finding early shots, getting shots off with 19 seconds left on the shot clock. It's a ton of fun. And there is a lot of skill, a lot of passing. There are defensive questions. There's questions on the glass. There's questions defending straight line drives and in the low post. But man, this team can score. So John Tonje's gone, but John Blackwell's back. He's tremendous. They brought in Nick Boyd from San Diego State, a very experienced starting guard. And then you still have Nolan Winter. So it's a really loaded team, a lot of shooting and a lot of skill.
Dude, the fact that you said all of those things and we could copy and paste that for the Indiana Hoosiers is hysterical. That because it's true. I mean, Indiana's in a completely new era. Mike Woodson is gone. Darren Devries comes in from West Virginia after 1 year there. He was at Drake for several years. And this Indiana team, the biggest problem, you saw enough of their games last year, Ryan. They couldn't score outside the paint. They were one of the best teams in the country at scoring inside the lane. But you take a single step outside of that, and it was just like, yeah, we got nothing. And it was so boring to watch, dude. It was so boring, man. No threes, no mid-range jumpers, no ball movement. It was just high pick and roll, dump it down low, and let the big man go to work. It was 1985 basketball, and it was so boring. It was also a type of basketball that if you got down by 8, 10, or 12 points, you were done. You couldn't do it. You could not come back. So that is gone. DeVries is here, and Indiana has dropped triple digits in 2 of their first 3 games of the season. So it is much different times and vibes in Bloomington, and it's exciting. And you get a win over Marquette in game 2 of the season. So, yeah, the vibes are pretty high for Indiana basketball. Brand new team, not a single returning player, couple of exciting freshmen, couple of guys from overseas. You bring in Tucker DeVries, who's the coach's son from West Virginia, Lamar Wilkerson, top 15 scorer from a year ago in Sam Houston. So, yeah, man, it's going to be exciting. And Indiana plays teams like Louisville, Kansas State, and Kentucky still a non-con play. So we'll figure out exactly where Indiana is. But people pick this team as a 500 squad in the Big Ten and a bubble team in the tournament. I know we're only 3 games in, but I think the Hoosiers have improved that. What about Wisconsin? What are the vibes? What's the feel on a reasonable expectation in 25-26 on the hardwood?
Man, vibes are high. And by the way, I'm excited for I've never had any ill will to Indiana. So I'm excited that Indiana basketball that's an important basketball school in the fabric of college basketball in the country.
I think Wisconsin's the same way. I think college basketball is better when Wisconsin and Indiana are better, for sure.
100% agree. And we'll set our over-under for when our 2 squads play at like 210. I think, vibes are really high. This is a team that last year, really was difficult for Big Ten teams to stop, slow down, ran into a bit of a buzzsaw in March in BYU, that really talented BYU squad. But
you get revenge coming up. Revenge coming up, right?
Potentially coming up. But that was a team that maybe with a better draw, I hesitate to say that, but they could have made a deeper run in March, and this team looks to build upon that. It is really skilled. Every player can shoot and pass, and they're relatively deep with a couple impact freshman bigs that they brought in. So, they're looking, if you listen to people around the program, words like Final Four are being talked about. It is a really together team. You mentioned a lot of new players for Indiana. You look at this Wisconsin team. Nolan Winter's been there 3 years. Blackwell's been there 3 years. Nick Boyd has been a 4-year starting point guard. Andrew Rohde is a senior. He started at Virginia last year. So there's new pieces, but there's a lot of veteran pieces, which in college basketball is one of the most important things you can do.
Yeah,
they're excited, man. To your point, it's early. We got to see it. They got to play a little better defense, but vibes are very high. I'm curious for you, who is the X factor? Like if Indiana hits the ceiling, who is the guy you point to and say that's maybe the tipping point?
Yeah, there's a couple of guys that people need to know about. Lamar Wilkerson, Tucker DeVries, I mentioned them. Those are going to be the ones you hear about the most. Those are your 20, 25 points per night type of guys. X Factor is a guy that we actually learned about. I learned a lot more about just last night or 2 nights ago for Indiana and their win over Milwaukee. It's Tatum Connerway, a guy that transferred in from Troy, Alabama, and came in. That's the X factor. That's the guy that can dribble the ball, get to the rack, draw fouls, kick it out for shooters, rebound, defend, just kind of does everything. And he's one that you may not notice him all the time, Ryan, but at the end of the game, you pull up the score sheet and it's like, oh, Tatum Connerway had 12 points. He also had 5 rebounds. Wow, he had 7 assists tonight. That's crazy. Wow, he had a steal in there too. And he had a couple of blocks. Like, it's one of those guys. That's what Tatum Connerway is going to be. Size is an issue for Indiana. You talked about that with Wisconsin. We've got that issue as well with Indiana. Rebounding may be a struggle against teams like Purdue. But Tayton Connerway's that X factor for me for Indiana, but you will know the name Lamar Wilkerson and Tucker Devries. Those guys will let it fly. Wilkerson's got half court range, and it's a lot of fun. So our two teams meet only one time this year, and you guys come to us, baby. You come to Bloomington at Assembly Hall. That is on February 7th. At 11 a.m. inside of Assembly Hall. So we'll definitely be meeting again to talk a little Indiana and Wisconsin basketball. But football comes first tomorrow in Bloomington, the Badgers and the Hoosiers. He is Ryan Harings of Locked On Badgers. I'm Jacob Goins of Locked On Hoosiers. Make sure you subscribe to our respective YouTube channels if you have not already. Leave your thoughts in the comments below. Score predictions for football, season predictions for basketball, maybe if you have a wild take, hot take, whatever it is, leave it in the YouTube comments below. And if you're listening on our audio podcasting platforms of Spotify, Amazon, Apple, we appreciate you. Follow us there and turn on those notifications so you never miss new episodes. We are back next time on our respective channels to our Hoosiers fans and Badgers fans. Stay safe, and we'll talk to you later.